some time, the Krays had been competing with a rival firm from South London, the Richardsons. An all-out gang war was imminent.
Ronnie always wanted to shoot somebody within the firm from across the water. He hated the Richardsons, absolutely hated them. He always thought that the Richardsons would come along with guns and there'd be a right shootout.
We'd all been paired off, given a name, an address, where they drank, girlfriend's house, wife's house, all that information. And we were just waiting for the off.
The call to arms never came. The Richardson gang were involved in a shootout at Mr. Smith's club in South London.
There was a desperate fight in March 1955 between Eddie Richardson and Frankie Fraser, who were business partners on the one hand, and some people called the Haywoods and their friends on the other. More or less everybody who'd been in the club was charged with a fray, and that took out really most of the Richardson, if I could say, team.
George Cornell was one member of the Richardson gang not present at the shooting.
When the Richardsons went down, that's when they went after Georgie, you know. But I don't think they'd have done it if the Richardsons wasn't in prison, you know, because he was on his own now. All the others were away, so the brave krays come out after one man with their guns again, like, you know.
One time Ron was very friendly with George Cornell, but there are differences. I don't know if my anger was as deep as it is when the murder happened.
Look, he was on the pavement fighter, George. He could have a rat, George. Yeah, couldn't he, Tom? He could, yeah. And he had no fear. He was the only man, I swear to God, that I ever see. He came into the Grave Morris pub, you know, one day, and Ronnie's with his little boys, you understand? And he came in on his own. The farmer there, if you like, all the crap, and they went to get him a drink, and he went, no, he said, I don't drink with you and your little puffs. And had his drink and walked out. But it wasn't long after that the old nail was gone in the coffin, you know what I mean? And it was, he was on top for him, you know what I mean?
What happened was the next night, after the fight, Cornell goes to visit a man in hospital in North London, and whether out of bravado, whether out of just recklessness, or whether he never thought anything was going to happen at all, goes into the Blind Beggar.
Ronnie Kray went to the pub with Ian Barry and Scotch Jack Dixon and shot Cornell dead.
He says, drive me up to the Blind Beggars. As we're going up there, he sticks a gun in Ian's hand and says, here, put that in your pocket. And he tells me where to pull up. He goes in, he couldn't have been in there any more than about 3-4 minutes. The guns went off. Ian didn't know what to do. He got out and shot the ceiling. I could never understand why he went down for murder. Ronnie gets into the car, real off in his head of, I've done it, I've actually shot him. I've shot that bastard Cornell.
Well, I just told Ron not to be in such an hurry, but he wasn't in a hurry, and he back in 10 minutes later, and that was it, and been done. Right?
Why was he in such a hurry, Rich?
Because he made up his mind. Once he made up his mind, nothing would change his mind up his mind.
I just done the bastard, he said. Drinking in our manner. Took it like as a bit of an insult. He was quite convinced that he'd done the right thing and sorted him out.
I know Charlie Richardson, in his book, said that Ron needed his sacrificial victim. And I think, you know, Charlie Richardson was a smart guy. He got it right. I think he was his sacrificial victim.
Hey, to get shot for calling someone a fat puff, well, that just shows you the state of Ronnie's mind in the end, you know.
We had a girl, a nurse in a London hospital, giving us hourly updates. And she told us that he'd been transferred to another hospital, neurological unit. Then I think it was about 3:30 in the morning. We got the message he's died after all. A little cheer went up from the crowd. And that was it, that was the end of Cornell.
After Ron had killed Cornell, what does he do? He goes into his flat, holed up, hiding from Well, he thinks it's after him. In fact, they weren't after him. Playing records of Winston Churchill's wartime speeches. Well, no normal murderer. That's very weird. And they were weird.
Everybody and his friend knew Ronnie Kray shot Cornell. He didn't hide it. The authorities knew. They couldn't find anybody to pin it on because witnesses, lack of witnesses.
Cornell, there's no point in shooting the poor bugger. No point at all. You know, the war, supposed war with Richardson's was over because the Richardsons were all in the nick by then, so there's no point in going and shooting him, and the blind beggar. But it was necessary for the cult.